Close your eyes for a second and imagine walking into a drugstore in 1955. Not the kind you know today, with the fluorescent lighting and the self-checkout kiosks. No, this one has a long marble counter running along one side, with chrome stools that spin when you sit on them. A teenager in a white paper hat is back there behind the counter, moving fast, pulling levers, mixing things together. The smell hits you first, sweet vanilla, a little chocolate, something carbonated cutting through the air. You sit down, and without even thinking about it, you feel like you belong somewhere. That was the soda fountain. And somehow, almost without anyone noticing, it disappeared. If you grew up in America in the first half of the 20th century, the soda fountain wasn't just a place to get a drink. It was the living room of the town. It was where you went after school, where couples went on dates, where old men sat and read the paper, where everybody from the banker to the bus driver showed up at some point during the day. It was one of the rare truly democratic spaces in American life, or at least it aspired to be, and the story of how it rose and fell tells us something real about what America was, and what it became. The whole thing started with medicine, which might surprise you. Back in the early 1800s, carbonated water was considered a health treatment. European spas had these natural mineral springs, and doctors believed the bubbling, effervescent water had genuine healing properties. American entrepreneurs figured out how to carbonate water artificially, and pharmacies started selling it as a remedy for all kinds of ailments. So the original soda fountains were literally in drugstores, dispensing what they called soda water as a kind of tonic. It wasn't long before someone thought to add flavoring, and then syrups, and then the whole thing stopped being about medicine and became about pure pleasure. By the mid-1800s, the soda fountain had become a social institution. Drugstores built elaborate marble and brass counters specifically to house these contraptions. The equipment was actually quite beautiful: ornate dispensing towers, mirrored backdrops, glass shelving full of colored syrups and apothecary bottles. The soda jerk, as the counter worker came to be called, was part chemist, part entertainer. The name came from the jerking motion used to pull the carbonated water tap. And the good ones took real pride in their craft. Knowing how to build a proper egg cream, how to achieve the right consistency on a malt, how to layer a banana split, these were considered legitimate skills, and the best soda jerks had reputations that stretched across a whole town. The Golden Age really hit its stride in the early 20th century, roughly from around 1900 through the 1940s. During Prohibition, when alcohol was banned nationwide, the soda fountain exploded in popularity. Americans still wanted to gather somewhere, still wanted a reason to go out, still wanted something to sip while they talked, and the soda fountain stepped right into that role. Ice cream sodas, sundaes, phosphates, milkshakes, the menu expanded constantly. Clever counter people invented new combinations, gave them theatrical names, and customers kept coming back to see what was new. Some historians have pointed out that the soda fountain essentially served the same social function as the pub or the tavern, just without the alcohol. And then there was the cultural moment of it all. The soda fountain showed up everywhere in American storytelling, in films, in music, in magazine illustrations. The image of teenagers crowded around a counter sharing a milkshake with two straws became one of the defining icons of mid-century American innocence. It was Norman Rockwell territory. The Saturday Evening Post ran covers of soda fountains. The corner drugstore with its fountain counter was understood to be the heart of small-town American life, the place where community actually happened in real time, face-to-face, shoulder-to-shoulder. But even at its peak, there were tensions underneath the surface. One of the darkest chapters in soda fountain history is the fact that many of them, particularly in the South but not only there, were strictly segregated. The same lunch counter where white teenagers laughed and flirted was off-limits to Black Americans. This became a defining battleground of the civil rights movement. In 1960, 4 black college students in Greensboro, North Carolina sat down at a Woolworth's lunch counter and refused to leave when they were denied service. That sit-in sparked a wave of similar protests across the South, and the lunch counter became a symbol not just of exclusion, but of the fight against it. So the soda fountain contained within it both the warmth of American community and the ugly reality of who that community was actually built for. Now, how did it decline? The fall of the soda fountain is really the story of several changes happening at the same time, all pulling in the same direction. First came the automobile, and with it, the drive-in. In the post-war years, car culture exploded. Americans wanted to eat in their cars, on their terms, on their schedule. The drive-in restaurant gave them that, and it didn't require finding a parking spot or sitting next to strangers at a counter. The car offered privacy and speed, which felt modern. Then came the fast food chain. McDonald's, which opened its first franchise location in 1953, represented a fundamentally different idea about how food service should work. Standardization, speed, low cost, volume. The soda fountain was essentially custom work. Every milkshake was made by hand, every sundae was assembled to order. That took time and skill and labor. Fast food chains stripped all of that out. And they won on price and convenience, which turned out to be what a huge portion of the American public actually wanted. The supermarket and the home refrigerator did their part too. Once Americans had reliable refrigerators at home, and once supermarkets were stocking every kind of ice cream imaginable, a lot of the practical reason to go to a soda fountain dissolved. You could just make a sundae at home. It wasn't as romantic, but it was easier, and cheaper, and you didn't have to put on shoes. The drugstores themselves changed as well. The big pharmacy chains that took over in the second half of the 20th century were interested in volume and efficiency, not in maintaining a lunch counter that required a full staff and a lot of equipment in a completely different kind of operation than filling prescriptions. One by one, the fountains got ripped out. The marble counters went to salvage. The chrome stools disappeared. Some of the old equipment ended up in antique malls. Some of it just got thrown away. By the 1980s, the soda fountain was essentially a nostalgia item. There were still some around, a few old-timers who refused to change, some tourist destinations that had figured out the fountain was actually a draw for people who remembered or romanticized the original. But as a genuine, functioning part of everyday American life, it was gone. The institutions that replaced it, the fast food chain, the coffee shop, eventually the smartphone and the delivery app, they each captured some piece of what the fountain had offered, but none of them really put it back together. Here's what's interesting, though. Every so often, something brings the soda fountain roaring back into conversation. There are artisan ice cream shops now that have styled themselves after the old counters. A few cities have seen genuine fountain revivals, complete with period equipment and handcrafted sodas. And some of the old recipes, egg creams, phosphates, real hand-spun malts, have developed a kind of cult following among food people who see them as a lost American craft tradition. The techniques aren't complicated, but they require attention and care in a way that feels countercultural right now, in an age where everything is automated and optimized. And maybe that's the real reason people keep coming back to the soda fountain, even in memory, even in these partial revivals. It represented a particular kind of American moment, unhurried, sociable, built around a shared counter and a few minutes of human contact. You didn't stare at a screen. You talked to whoever was sitting next to you, or you talked to the kid behind the counter who was spinning your glass under the malt machine. There was a rhythm to it. A flavor to it, literally and otherwise. What happened to the soda fountain is really a version of the same story that happened to a lot of the old gathering places in American life. Efficiency won. Convenience won. Scale won. And we got something faster and cheaper in return. Whether we got something better is a question that depends on what you think a town, or a life, is actually supposed to feel like. The marble counter is gone. The chrome stool stopped spinning. But somewhere in the back of American memory, the soda jerk is still jerking that tap, and the glass is still cold, and for just a moment everything feels like it's right where it belongs.